yeah, talk about no good deed going unpunished, ladies and gentlemen. Mormonism's back, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we balance each other out.
Do you have any other purity tests, you Pharisee heathen? Like, that doesn't help anybody, right?
I think I said knuckle-dragging troglodyte. In our church, we actually have the reverse of the Peter principle.
How do you better sustain your leaders? Because they don't want this to be a problem.
I see the draw of that type of thinking, but I don't think it's useful at all.
But for those that might have legitimate concerns, we are going to walk you through. Okay, how do we start this out? What just happened, guys? Welcome, guys.
Kerfuffle on X that I did nothing to get dragged into except to be associated with this show.
Dude, I
didn't even know this was a thing until someone like posted about it with me tagged, being like, is this what you believe? And I'm like, yeah, definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody texted me directly and was like, hey, just want to make sure, like, are you aware of this? And I was like, I think I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but instead of making assumptions, I'm just going to go try to find out.
When you started texting me saying like, so what did you actually mean about this? And it's a screenshot of a reply. And I couldn't remember exactly where it came from. I was like, this is odd. Then all of a sudden I get back into reception and the alerts just start going off like crazy. So, talk about no good deed going unpunished. Ladies and gentlemen, this one is a doozy. Usually we debunk anti-Mormons on this program, but we're not going to debunk or dunk on fellow saints. I'm trying to channel my inner Brad Whitbeck here. And just like Barack Obama had his anger translator, the Key and Peele actor came into Congress and translated for Barack Obama. I've got Ethan Fawcett here, life coach and bon vivant, who's going to help get us through the epic Twitter controversy, the LDX controversy that just happened today. And the big question is, do we have the weakest leadership on the planet, or is LDX just brain dead? Which one of the two? I think it's the LDX.
Possibly be some combination.
Could there be a possibility that Cardin is not perfect in articulating his thoughts?
Dude, okay.
No,
so for
that not even a chance. There's no way that Cardin could just overstate and overspeak things while he tries to communicate.
Okay.
That's not him at all.
Not once.
So for the few people that don't know exactly what's going on, or have been part of the online mob that has taken comments by me out of context, let me fill you guys in. And for the few people that are actually legitimately concerned about whether or not we're, evil speaking of the Lord's anointed or whatever, not for the haters and the folks that will always take us out of context, but for those that might have legitimate concerns, we are going to walk you through this. Okay. In a nutshell, there is an individual. I wouldn't call him a fan of the show, at least not anymore for sure. You know what I'm saying? But there's a young man that
not if we do this episode wrong.
Yeah. Not if we do this episode wrong. There's a young man who runs a Twitter account called KT Martin. All right. And I recognize him as having commented over the years on myriad things on our show. One of the beautiful things about Chemo Brain is you forget a lot. And so he's posted enough on and around our content. Can't remember if he's a friendly, can't remember if he's a for or an against, but I do remember that he posted some heartbreaking things over the past couple of months, having deep troubling issues in some of his human relationships, having, some just profound problems in his life. And I remember actually commenting on a couple of other threads like, hey man, I wouldn't wish what you're going through on your worst enemy. On my worst enemy, so on and so forth. So he posted the following, and I put a screenshot here just so that everybody can see what's going on. He posted the following. If I was an outsider and saw how many of our wards handle Mother's Day versus Father's Day, I would think that our church considers fatherhood to be a joke. It is very sad. And okay, he's frustrated about how his ward handled Father's Day, which I think we've heard a lot of women speak about kind of a frustration about how Mother's Day has been handled as of late in comparison to how it was handled when we were growing up, for example. So perfectly legitimate complaint. Some might disagree with him. Some might agree with him. But at the end of the day, we've heard this before. All right. The dude's already suffering. So I decided to pop in there and just say, hey, man, our current leadership is the weakest in church history, but that's only going to last another, 10 or 15 years. So I'm kind of like, a chin up attitude, right? My son came in one day after he was recruited to play on a club team. Their defense was absolutely horrible. Nobody wanted to say it out loud, but he was getting pummeled as a goalkeeper, 50, 60, 70 shots on goal in one game, practically breaking his fingers with how many times they shot the ball at him. But I loved it as a father and as a soccer coach myself, because I'm like, this is practice you cannot pay for. And he comes off the sidelines one day and he's just super frustrated because they're down by 7. It's like 7-3 and it's in the fourth quarter. I told him, dude, don't sweat it. Like, your defense sucks, bro. This game's not on you, but this is practice you can't pay for, baby, right? So I was meaning to hopefully cheer the guy up. Just like, look, not every ward handles this well. We've got endemic and widespread kind of just weak sauce, normie wokeism still in the church, and it's getting filtered out, but it's going to take 10 to 15 years to get out of our system. Don't sweat it.
This is the kind of stuff that WardRadio talks about all the time. It's sort of like, we've been wealthy for so long and we've gotten used to being praised for how great members of the church are at different things. And so we're just kind of avoid, the class, we avoid the confrontation, we avoid the conflict. And so this is just like what Cardin's talking about. This is not new stuff.
However,
yes,
I will say, the way I understood both posts was as more critical of general local leadership than I would ever be, because I just don't think that's useful. I don't think it is. It's like going to your son's practice and being like, you guys are weak and ineffectual. In 10 to 15 years, this team will be worth something, right? Like, that would not be a good way to help coach that team, would it? Right?
Some of this also stems from the fact that, like, Twitter is not my most proficient social media platform at all. And one of the things I constantly have to remind myself of is, if you comment on somebody's comment on a YouTube video, unless somebody watches that video, they don't see your comment. You know what I'm saying? But on Twitter, it's its own unique post. You know what I'm saying? Like, anybody that subscribes.
People taking that reply that you said and saying our leadership is the weakest it's been, like, them just broadcasting that. I don't know. It bugged me when I saw what I felt like was a lot of people very eager to make you look as bad as possible. And I'm like, guys, come on. You don't need to do that. Like, you can go ahead and try to understand what Cardin's trying to say, because you clarified it very quickly. Like, you had another interaction with him, like almost exactly below what you said, where you're like, no, I'm not talking about the brethren. Read it in an amicable tone, right? And hopefully you'll understand what I'm trying to say. That said, I need to clarify again. I don't think either of you should be out here being like, man, it's so sad that the church is not supporting fathers the way that they need to be. Like, how is that helpful? Especially for people like me, who my Father's Day at church was one of the best Father's Days I have ever had.
Really?
We had some of the best talks I've ever heard. They were absolutely amazing. One of the youth talks was incredible. Both of the people talking after about the responsibility that a father has to their children, the love that they have for their children, the highs and the lows that fatherhood could bring, were absolutely amazing, right? And so when, like, you have some inconsistency with people's experiences, I think it's not super helpful to just go out there and throw down blanket statements like, oh yeah, like, to outsiders, everyone will think that the church thinks that fathers are a joke. I think that seems a little critical to me. And there were enough people who agreed with, I think, my understanding of that he shut down the whole thread, right? But he did clarify to me after that wasn't his intent either, right?
Well, we do have, and we've talked about this a lot on the program, and I agree with you. This is why I think some of these criticisms are disingenuous. A lot of people familiar with our program know that this has been a common ailment, okay? That in our desire to be inoffensive, we have neutered very important staples of our religion. For example, in our desire to be inoffensive towards women who are unmarried or women who have yet to be to have children, many congregations have neutered the importance of Mother's Day. And they've kind of watered it down into this euphemized, we love all women. If you're a woman, here's a flower and a Mother's Day card. So much so that many of the actual mothers that have gone through the travail of childbirth and the difficulty of raising little humans say, well, wait, huh? What? Hold on. And it seemed to me from his original post that he was kind of lamenting something a little bit similar. In fact, he did indeed say it is very sad. And this guy's going through a lot of sad stuff already. So here I come in trying to cheer this bro up, and boy, did the internet talk about no good deed going unpunished. I've never seen more apostate memes. I've never seen, dude, I think that Midjourney had to look up, what does apostate mean if I'm going to make a Brigham Young apostate meme for these people?
Here's one thing I do want to say about this.
Yeah.
I feel like way too many of these guys were just looking for an opportunity to say that Cardin's bad and, WardRadio is going down for this. It's like, guys, look, the point of our show is to, first off, we started in debunking anti-Mormon arguments against the church. We're doing what we can to make a positive space online for LDS members. And ironically, I think that's kind of the goal of a lot of the people over on LDS X.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what has happened here is that on X, you have a lot of people who have shared clips of WardRadio, mostly controversial things that Kwaku has said. And that's what they think the sum total of the show is. They don't recognize all of the episodes that we've done with Don Bradley talking about really interesting research he's done on polygamy. They don't recognize all of the stuff we've talked about with Jerry Grover and all of the awesome evidences that he covers. They aren't aware of the episode we just did with Matt Ball. That was amazing with all these faithful and uplifting stories, right? So there's a lot of people on X that I think have never had a positive interaction with our show. So to them, our show is this apostate thing that's just bad, right?
That is the most charitable take on the planet, and this is why I love you, Brad Whitbeck. This is why I love you.
He's right, and you
he's right. At two, right. Ethan, at two. Okay,
he's right
tell me.
Because of the way that X works, right? And so a lot of LDX, Latter-day Saint X, I feel like they're kind of, especially the ones that are on it really frequently and are consistently in their view trying to really contend for the church on it, which is an admirable thing to do. With the way that the world has been going, especially for a lot of conservative leaning members, it seems like it's every other day that the Mormons are mentioned on some conservative podcast. Like I was, what was it? Just the other day, Tim Cass on his Culture War show, they were doing like Orthodox bros versus Catholics, and they were talking about, and Tim Pool actually brought up, like, isn't it a commandment to multiply and replenish the earth? And he looks up, he's like, who does this the best? And the very first thing he says is like, oh, well, Mormons, no offense to them, I'm pretty sure they don't count. And then he moves on, and it was like, oh, come on, not again, right? And I think a lot of Latter-day Saints on X, they're so used to just getting kind of this backhanded treatment from so many people that as soon as they see something that even like could possibly be interpreted as apostate, there's almost like this, at least like from my perspective, it almost feels like they're starting to have this sort of auto-responsive nature develop where they see something and they just kind of, I know how to categorize this. This is the thing that I don't like, that I'm constantly bombarded with. Which, like, in all fairness to them, that's kind of how Twitter works, with how it elevates controversy. And so It makes total sense.
So this is all just endemic to the platform, and it has nothing to do with the fact that
Elon Musk's fault, and and we just need to blame him.
Oh, okay. So it's not.
But that being said, I will say
it's not a problem with widespread anonymous profiles by people too cowardly to put their own names on any of their takes that have never done a based thing in their life. LARPing as the actually based pioneer ancestors that they have, so desperate to be tough and cool, but they're too afraid to even use their real names. So they lash out being like, one of my dads crossed the plains. Another one of them broke a leg while building the Salt Lake Temple. What did I do? I defended apostates on Twitter. And by apostates, I mean people I don't know behind a cloak of anonymity. They need to touch grass. These aren't good people. They're mentally ill.
You're going. Oh my God.
You're going too far again.
Oh, okay. Well, this is why I have you here. This is why I have you here.
These are mentally.
Let's. So one of the things you said was good was touch grass. When you get emotionally over wrapped up in and involved in internet stuff, it is a good idea to take a break every once in a while. That's a true statement.
So you don't think any of these people had a horrible take that was cruel?
I think we should all be out there touching grass. Carden, the first question that I want to ask is, where is your locus of control?
Oh, no, I totally understand.
Internal or external?
I totally understand these people have codependency issues. Like
he's asking you.
Me? No. While this was going on, I was laughing shopping for e-bikes with my son. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, these people are crashing out. Like,
but remember, inasmuch as we have done it to the least of these, our brethren, we've done it unto Christ, right? So for me, when I look at things like this, I'm like, okay, I see people who are engaging in behavior that I don't think is right. I don't think is good. But I think that they seem to be trying to get closer to Christ, right? So
wait, but how can you say that when you look at their behavior? Like, literally, it's nothing but, oh, Carden is gay and an idiot and a troll. Kwaku is a degenerate. Insert racist slur here. Look what they said about you.
Dude, there was not a single racist slur against Kwaku in all of this.
Well, not today.
That I saw.
Not today.
Yeah, no. Let's not conflate other things with today, because I think there were, like, I want to make super clear. I think anyone who is like doing the racial slur thing or going down the route of like, hey, Nazis are cool. Yeah, guess what, guys? You should not be renewing your temple recommends, because you are starting to affiliate with groups that have teachings quite contrary to what the gospel teaches, right? So I think, like, racism and Nazism aside, Carden, what I saw from tonight's kerfuffle was people who are for all intents and purposes, trying to do this thing on X that we have been trying to do on YouTube.
But
right?
if they were, they'd be following Matthew 5:22. They would have come to me. They would have said, hey, what do you... There was only 2 people, I counted them out of 52 responses, that said, yes, would you elaborate, please? All the others, I give Katie Martin credit. He said, this post was not a criticism of the brethren. Take your blossoming apostate rhetoric somewhere else, which I think was actually a very flowerful, flowerful, that was a horrible word, a flowery way of Donkey Kong stomping somebody who is trying to make you feel better, bro. But
yeah, no. So here's the deal. I think, okay, when I look at the diffusion of responsibility that is happening on X versus us and our show, we have what? Me, you, Ethan, occasionally Jonah or Kwaku or Luke on the show. We are all public facing in who we are and what we are doing. I think we have a greater responsibility to take the high road, even when others around us are not. And even though that sucks, guess what? The gospel asks us to do things that suck all the time. That's the part of growing that we have to do, right? Like, we don't believe in some God that's like, oh no, were people mean to you on Twitter? Let me go zap those folks right now, right? That's not what he's waiting to do.
I have a ton of screenshots pulled up that I would love to absolutely just, but I'm just kidding.
I'm imagining a sort of like modern 21st century version of some Jesus phrases. Like, you remember the one where he says, if someone compels you to give them your cloak, give them your coat also. Maybe a
Uh-huh.
modern version could be something like, if someone criticizes you on X, agree with them and then ask them if
Yeah.
there's something you can do to like help promote their platform or something. Like, I don't know what it would be. I'm sure like if someone feels really creative, they should come up with some 21st century Jesus
Dude, we
quotes and
absolutely should do
comments.
that.
Oh yeah,
For
it'd be
now,
awesome to do a full episode on that. But
the direct Jesus quote that I think we should include is, agree with thine adversary quickly, lest he esteem thee to be thine enemy.
Okay, so here's my only beef. So here's my only beef, and this is my question, okay? Because in all seriousness, all joking aside, yes, we want to delight in truth. We want to denounce deception. We don't think, okay, like in our church, we actually have the reverse of the Peter principle. And I've talked about this a lot on my show. And if you're unfamiliar with our show, you should study this. There's a phenomenon in organizational leadership where generally we get promoted out of our proficiency and into an area of discomfort or a job that we're no longer good at, right? And that's called the Peter principle, that you get promoted out of what you're good at into something you're not good at. And it's been a big problem in everything from the DMV to large Fortune 500 corporations, so much so that it has its own name, the Peter principle, right? Well, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we actually kind of had the reverse problem. All right, that oftentimes it's our leadership on top that gets it better than even middle management or sometimes lower management, except for bishops. That's the toughest, most thankless job on the planet. Those guys are all 100% off the hook. And so I think that it's a valid conversation topic to say, how can we address this so that original posts like this don't happen, because they seem to be widespread complaints. And also, I think it's worthwhile. Oh, I see you making signs. Say what you want to say. Say what you want to say.
What I want to say directly to this is a conversation I've wanted to have on WardRadio for a while.
Okay.
Is, what does effective sustaining of our leadership look like, particularly when they are doing things that we disagree with, right? And this is something that I think I've learned really well from writing. Because, and especially co-writing a book with my own wife. Riley and I, we've butted heads once or twice while doing that. And,
whoa.
What's been really cool is figuring out how to actually not just tolerate writing a book together, but love writing a book together. Because the way that I would explain that and pull it into what we're talking about now is, I think when we look at stuff like the Lord called his people Zion because they were of one heart and one mind and dwelt in righteousness, right? Well, and dwelt in righteousness and there was no part among them almost feels like a consequence of them being of one heart and one mind. And I would almost argue that being of one heart could be expressed as having a shared desire, and then being of one mind is having a shared goal, right? And right now, I think the majority of the conflict that we are looking at in this specific conversation, and this I think can be mapped onto how to deal with sustaining our leaders. Part of that conflict is coming from us thinking that each other have a different desire and a different goal. I think half the reason a ton of these guys are coming after you is because they think that your desire is to change the church, not to bring the church and everyone in it closer to Christ, right? They think you have some ulterior agenda, or they think that you're like just trying to get views, right?
Okay, but you don't think that doesn't say a lot more about them than it does about me or us?
No,
you could say that they have a responsibility to learn more about you. But from
that will
our
also
perspective,
change nothing.
we can't just wag our fingers and tell them that they should do better.
Because I see no difference between male-dominated LDS Frogmo X and female-dominated woke Instagram. Like, taking Jared Halverson out of context for one word in a phrase that was meant to be uplifting, listen with your feminine ears, how is that any different than trying to take this out of context in order to Donkey Kong stomp on WardRadio? It's the exact same behavior, but it's the horseshoe effect.
Carden, I think this is a point where I feel like you are anticipating their desire as being just something purely negative, right? Because maybe there are people who that is their only desire, right? The V Venerabilis dude, that might be his desire. He has been so vocally anti-WardRadio as a podcast for forever. I'm not surprised if that's his actual
He's
desire.
the lead
with his
furry.
Goal being, yes, he is. With his goal being he wants to see the podcast destroyed. He hates us more than he seems to love Christ. And I'm curious to know what he thinks of my assessment. That's what it seems like when I see what he has to say. I'm curious to know if there's a way that can be remedied. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm open to that idea, but all the behavior I've seen makes me think that that's the case. Now, I think that it's important for us to try to find a way to get people on X knowing what our real true desire is and what our goal is. Is our desire to make a safer space online for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Is that a shared desire that they have too? Where can we build together, right? Lead with that. Find where that is immediately and then build there. This applies with sustaining our church leadership as well. Because if our church leadership is asking us to do something that we think is dumb, we can then be like, okay, when you're asking me to do this, what is the outcome you're looking for here? And ask them and try to understand. And then if maybe you're wrong in what you think they're trying to accomplish, or maybe them explaining to you what they are trying to accomplish, you can then say, oh, that's awesome. I actually have this idea that I think could help us achieve that. Then they might even say, oh yeah, let's also do that, right? Like, I think it helps us get on the same page in a way that we can then move forward effectively. And I think that is far more effective than just going out there and being like, yeah, this makes me really sad that my church leaders and they're just with the lame culture of right now, and I can't wait for the next few years when they finally catch up to being as based as I am, right? Like, I'm like, come on, that doesn't do anything helpful. So,
I can't wait for all the apostles to just be based memesters posting on X about how we all need to dunk on the woke people. Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
actually. So, oh man, keep going, Brad.
Does that make sense though, Carden?
Yeah,
where I'm coming from, because I think I know that's not like the flashiest strategy, and it's not the strategy that feels best. It definitely feels better to find like the perfect response of like do you know how many things I had to delete today, Carden? Where I was like, oh yeah, well,
I have to say, for those that haven't heard it, I've seen Unfiltered Brad before, and it's a treat. It really is. But he is exercising self-control, and that's something we should all try to do.
But I'm like, bro, okay, if I say this, it is going to make it worse. Because what am I doing in that moment that I'm trying to like just stomp on somebody? I'm trying to gratify my own pride, right? I'm not trying to do what Jesus would do. I'm not trying to turn the other cheek. And it's not going to make the world a better place for anyone, right? Because what does it also do? It also shows people who are just along for the ride, seeing this conversation. They're like, oh, wow, those members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on X, they are a vitriolic bunch, aren't they? Right? That is not what we should have that space be. And I think the only way to correct that is by leading by example, right?
Okay, so translate for me. You got to walk me through this. Okay? So instead of saying these people are a bunch of degenerate wannabes, cowards, hiding behind anonymous profiles because they have no spine and they need to touch grass, what should I say instead?
What you should say is not make outrageous assumptions about these people based on 4 sentences of text that you've had with them. Okay. You need to take a step back and ask.
Okay.
What are they doing on X? What is their purpose in being here? check out their profile. Oh, they're saying, I am a LDS member of the church who loves the church, who's trying to build it up. Cool. We have that common ground. How am I supposed to interact with this person knowing that, right? And I'd say this even goes for people who aren't like active members of the church. And maybe this is naive of me to do, but there's like accounts like Stacker, a dude who is like, I think has had a change of worldview and is trying to like work through that on X. He's not trying to build up the church, but I also don't think that he's just out there trying to attack people. I think he's trying to find out what's true. I could be wrong on that, right? And maybe I'm naive.
Okay, so
wrong,
just help me, just like, walk me through this one. I was going to respond to the guy. So instead of saying, go pound sand, you're no different than a woke blue-haired feminist, you know, just on the other side of the horseshoe. What should I say? Dear brother.
The one that you're trying to respond to right now, what did it say again?
You know, well, there's like 5 of them right here, but there was this guy named Spaceboy that said Cardin is an idiot and a troll.
So, as a general rule of thumb, if that's how they're approaching it on the internet, probably just ignore them. But if somebody else is saying something to the effect of, is this really what they're trying to say? Like, if so, like, that's not a good look or something, right? If someone's saying something like that, that's when you go, hey, I think it looks like people are misunderstanding what my intent was here. Maybe we could like clarify and it's hard to do this over X because usually my go-to is let's just talk, right? Because whenever there's issues over text, a lot of it has to do with tone and a lack of being able to read facial expressions and stuff. And so it's tough to do over X, but I think at the very least you could say, hey, I think a lot of people are misreading my intent here. Maybe I didn't write this very well, but like if you could like give me the benefit of the doubt, I promise.
Do the apology that they never ever will let you live down. You never apologize, never complain, never explain.
Well, you don't have to apologize, but you can just say, hey, it looks like people are misrepresenting or misinterpreting what I said. That's not what I intended.
Okay, I'm going to try this.
For the record, I fully support the brethren.
I'm going to try this. I'm channeling.
You could just start with that. And
make your position
have clarifying
clear.
Questions.
Okay.
Yeah, if people have clarifying questions, they can ask those questions. But yeah, like Brad said, make your position clear and say, hey, like what people are saying, just for the record, that's not me. This is me.
So to the guy that said, you can always weed out the apostates by asking them if they support the prophet. And then Brad said, I support the prophet, thumbs up. So me saying, yes, I support the prophet, ... Do you have any other purity tests, you idiot? That second
literally
part.
Just get rid of that second
part. The second part.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So I mean, I'm starting, I'm getting this. I'm starting to get this.
Like, bro, you have any other purity tests, you Pharisee heathen? Like, that doesn't help anybody, right? Like,
I think I said knuckle-dragging troglodyte, but...
Are you sure it wasn't Raka, you know?
Yeah, exactly. No, I didn't say troglodyte.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Brad.
Oh, just when I think of the Sermon on the Mount and the way that Jesus is asking us to live our lives, he's asking us to live in a higher way, and it is hard to do, especially when it's fellow members of the church who are not treating you fairly. I will absolutely say that too. Like, this is the thing. It's really funny because I will like go out here and I'll be like, hey, Cardin, here are all these things that I think you should be doing better. Yeah. And then I'll tell these other people, here's what I think you should probably be doing better too. And they're like, wow, you should really be telling Cardin this. I'm like, you think I'm not telling him this like in private on a phone call? I even have it publicly on several of these things. Like, I'm absolutely saying this to Cardin as well. And I'm saying it to myself every time that I delete the things that I know I shouldn't be saying, right? So, I don't know. I think we all need to try to do better. And where that comes from is finding our agreement and our center in Christ, right? Do we all agree? Like, just so that it's out there. I mean, for me, I sustain our prophets. I sustain my local leadership. I sustain all of the people that I work with in the church. Does that mean I always agree with absolutely everything that they say and how they do it? Not necessarily. I'm also not going to be out there openly criticizing them because I don't think that's an effective way to make any meaningful difference. But I think that it's important to clarify that, because to people who don't know us, if all they see is a criticism of the brethren from us, or what they perceive as a criticism of the brethren, then I think they'll get defensive about it, right? And I can't blame them for that, but I can try to clarify and get on the same page as quickly as possible, and then try to build from there.
Yeah. Good job, Brad. Okay. So
I want to add to this a little bit of we've kind of dunked on Cardin a little bit here.
Yeah.
And I want to add
probably too much. I'm sorry, Cardin.
No, I'm gonna add to the other side of this, right? So I think all of us tend to come at topics like this from two different directions, right? I think there's people like Cardin that tend to maybe speak before he thinks, right? And then there's other people that are a lot more like me, that I tend to think a little too much before I speak, sometimes to the point where I often don't say things that I should. And I get afraid to say things which are true and stand up for my faith.
Yeah.
People like Cardin, he doesn't have that problem. The problem that he has is sometimes he says things that he shouldn't say on top of saying the things that he should say.
That's the best part.
Yeah. It makes life so interesting, right? But the point is, all of us are trying to work our way towards the center where we are like the Savior, where we say the things that we should say and we don't say the things that we shouldn't say, right? And it's totally okay that Cardin says things that he shouldn't say, because he's saying the things that I should say, but I don't. And that's the value of people like Cardin, and we need more people like that. And we also need the people like me that say, hey, wait, let's hold back, right? Because we balance each other out. And when we try to be like the Savior, and we give each other the benefit of the doubt, and we end up working together, it builds up a better church, a better people, better YouTube channels, as we all try our best to stand up for the Lord's church, because that's what we're all trying to do.
I totally agree, 100%, because I think we need to be giving each other grace and doing what we can to become better peacemakers, and that is by nature going to involve us misstepping along the way. We're going to say things we shouldn't have said. We're going to miss saying things that we should have said. And I'm really glad you bring that part up, because I think that that's an under-addressed part of peacemaking. Because like President Nelson said in his talk on peacemaking, this doesn't mean peace at any price, right? We still need to stand up for our convictions, and we need to stand up for what we believe is correct and right. But let's do that without Donkey Kong stomping everybody in our path.
Okay, now with that said, I will say my comment did not come out of nowhere. And I think we do live, we have a problem right now with weak leadership in our church. I cannot
but also
look.
Weak following.
Oh, no.
We have people who are terrible at following through.
Our leadership is an exact mirror manifestation of
I want you to be very specific in what you mean when you say weak leadership.
I was about to. So we have a problem with weak leadership in our church. Parley P. Pratt as a missionary. We're not talking, just like, well, he was never prophet. You know what I'm saying? He was an apostle, I believe. And it was different back then, though. Also, like the first presidency had a different configuration then than it did now, and so on and so forth. But top 10 dude, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? When he wrote his book, A Voice of Warning, it was titled, there was in the first two editions, you need to go look this up. You can recognize the first two editions because on the title page of the first two editions, there was a $300 reward posted to anybody that could refute the doctrines of his book, A Voice of Warning, and a criteria for the debate. The debate had to be public with 3 members that were not members of either one of the denominations choosing the winner. This dude was literally walking around saying, debate me, bro, to you know, in 1850 and publishing books saying the same thing. And now we have nothing but general conference talks and Fifth Sunday talks on like de-escalation with doilies on the table and like how to be a nice guy. And I think a lot of people say that is important. I do believe Russell M. Nelson's Peacemakers talk was inspired. I do believe that everybody needs to learn de-escalation. At the same time, when you have 50 years of this during the wealth of the post-war, correcting for one side of the road without any of the other instruction correcting on the other side of the road, you start getting a slow drift into this kind of malaise, as Jimmy Carter put it, or as Katie Martin said, this blah of just sad loss of some beloved principles in the culture of our faith. And the culture war is over, fortunately. I think people chose to go back to many of these traditional values. There's a lot of the ick in our system still. And, these people and this whole like don't celebrate fathers because it's the patriarchy, don't celebrate mothers because not everybody can become a mother. That's like 2019 wokeism right there. All right. It's already out of style everywhere else, but things in Mormonism last an extra 5 or 6 years. And then the callings last 5 or 6 years. So do the math. Within 10 to 12 years, this is all out of our system and we can go back to normal. So let us take heart. I think that's a valuable conversation without being an apostate.
I think it's a valuable conversation to be had, but let's find a way to have it in a way that sustains our local leadership, right? Mm-hmm. So for starters, one thing that I want to say, my local leaders don't have this as a problem. True. Right? And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge too, is that like people's experience is going to be different in different wards. And so like for starters, we need to clarify that this is not some like blanket statement that I think can even be made. And I don't know. What is the use in saying we have the weakest leadership we've had in all of church history? First off, I don't even think that's true. I think they're dealing with very different problems than were dealt with before, right? I think that we have leadership that is rising to the occasion to the challenges that they are being given, which are very different than Parley P. Pratt's getting shot and everything, right? Like we have a very different world that we're dealing with and a very different landscape that they have to navigate in order for us to spread the gospel to all the world, right? That's fair. I think it's really, really easy for us to try to be backseat drivers and say, oh man, if they were just based in like challenging people to duels and smiting them in the name of God, then we'd be killing it. This
Mormonism's back, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Like I see the draw of that type of thinking, but I don't think it's useful at all. Right?
It reminds me of that Teddy Roosevelt quote about the critic essentially lacking compared to the man who's actually
it's not the critic
arena.
Who counts, it is the man who is in the ring. Yes.
Yeah, and so like in this case, like Brad's saying, it's really tough to actually understand what's going on for leaders, and they like you're saying, they have to deal with the world that we live in, and the ultimate long-term goal for them, for the vast majority of them. I know that there's going to be the occasional bad apple, but like the vast majority of leaders in the church, their goal is to help people come into Christ. Their goal is the immortality and eternal life of man. And if that means like having to like navigate, like, because I can only imagine how difficult it would be, like just for example, to be a bishop where like, okay, I know I've got that one family where the mom is like super feminist, and I've got this other family where the dad is like going through his manosphere phase, and like I have to like navigate like having conference talks that don't offend them both because I don't want either one of them leaving the church.
He's trying to wear muscle t-shirts again, and it's just not working.
Yeah, it is. Kind of sounds like he's gonna leave the church because Russell M. Nelson got the vax, baby jab, whatever, and like this other one, it kind of sounds like she's like loving Julie Hanks a little too much.
That's funny.
Balancing between that is really tough because ultimately his whole goal is making sure that both families are coming closer to the Savior. And so how do you be like, okay, like I don't want to offend them, but like how do I make sure that I'm testifying of truth while also like ministering to them individually as they work through this stuff? Like it's hard. I can
And so
only
that's
imagine.
where I think what we can do and what we should be doing is trying to find a way to make this discussion about how do you better sustain your leaders, because they don't want this to be a problem.
It's fair.
They don't want members of their congregation to walk away thinking, oh man, I didn't hear enough about fathers and I felt like this was a big miss. Like they don't want that. That is nobody's goal, I think. Maybe there's the occasional bad apple like Ethan was talking about, but I don't think your average bishop is out there like, now I'm going to dethrone the patriarchy by not mentioning fathers enough on Father's Day. Like that's not what they do. Your bishop is focused on trying to help his ward, like Ethan was saying, come unto Christ and bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man. So I think what we need to do as members of the church is focus on how can we sustain our leaders in doing that. If we find a situation where we're like, you know what, I think there was a missed opportunity here that we could be doing something better. What can I do to not like add something to my bishop's plate by being like, hey, here's another problem I think you need to be solving. What can you do to show up to your bishop and say, hey, I think we have an opportunity to help bring more souls to Christ by doing this thing. And here's how I think I could help do it. Or another person that I've talked to who says they could be good about doing this thing. Are you interested in something like that? I think that's a very different conversation than just going out there and yelling into the ether on X. Oh man, my leaders didn't make things the way I wanted to. They didn't call down fire on the priests of Elijah today, and I think it's shaking my testimony now. Like it just makes me sad. Shut up. No, that's not what we do. This is not what we're supposed to be doing. We need to be anxiously engaged in a good cause. Right?
Okay.
Not anxiously complaining about.
And I love that approach. I love that approach because it puts you in a position where you can actually do something instead of just complain about it. Like go to your bishop, or honestly, even better yet, go to your elders quorum present. Like just like having like been in some of these dynamics. Bishop's already overloaded, but the elders quorum president could probably help like coordinate some stuff for Father's Day. So if you have ideas, talk to him.
Yeah,
say,
especially the elders quorum president
ideas.
in Katie Martin's ward, because apparently he wasn't planning his Father's Day activity.
Apparently not. But Katie Martin, he could go to his elders quorum president or his bishop and say, hey, like I'm having a hard time. I feel like Father's Day just honestly wasn't that great at church. Can we just talk about this? And then the bishop or the elders quorum president or whoever can listen and be like, oh, I hear what you're saying. Could we try these things next year? Can maybe next year I invite you to like be a part of a group of people that help plan what we're going to do for Father's Day? Like whatever the solution is. But like Brad was saying, he's not like 99.9%, he's not sitting there thinking, okay, this is how I dethrone the patriarchy. He's probably just busy, stressed, trying to figure out how to handle, such and such couple through like a stillborn birth or something, right? So just go to him and say, hey, I want to help with this. What can I do?
And one point I want to reiterate about KT Martin, I think that I misinterpreted his initial post as overly critical, right? Because he clarified to me later that that's not what his intent was, right? And so I want to make sure that that's clear. I think he wasn't trying to do that. It can be so easy to misunderstand each other over text on places like X.
You know what I feel like? I feel like an anchorman after the battle with the different news stations. How they're back in theirs and like, whoa, that escalated quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So I repent, Brad. Thanks for calling me out, and telling me that
I got you.
I was the wrong one. Now I know whose team you're on.
Oh, you weren't the
you know,
only wrong one. Don't get me wrong on that. Like,
As it turns out, everybody's wrong until we come to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. Or
which really is the
however that
case.
verse goes.
Yeah.
So let us know what you. Oh, sorry. Say, Brad. I was going to wrap it up, but now finish what you got to say.
There was one other thing that was on my mind that I kind of wanted to go over.
It was like how to make bishops' jobs easier.
Yeah, I really do think that if we, as members of the ward, are not going to church with an attitude of what can the church do for me, but what can I do for the church, we will be so much better off. We lose our lives to save them, right? We find our lives in losing them in service of others. And so if we are going to this with an attitude of, okay, what can I do to uplift my ward and make it a better place? We're going to be so much better off. We're going to have less disappointing days too. Because you know what? What makes it for a disappointing day at church is when you go with an expectation of something and then don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't have a disappointing day at church when you go looking for opportunities to serve others, because you always find those. You will never not have an opportunity to serve someone at church.
You know, Brad,
I promise you that.
Some days I'm disappointed you're not in my ward because I think you'd be really fun to have in my ward. Sometimes I'm actually very happy that you're not in my ward because then I would feel, like just guilty being held to this constant higher standard, and I kind of like just being comfortable in my silly boomers fault. And woke right POSs. And I just like being able to walk around and grumble and murmur like Layman and Lemuel.
Well, we all do. We all do. That's the natural man, right? The natural man's thing is like, I'm going to grumble about this thing, which actually is probably, there's truth to it. There is some truth in there. Like when we look at the scripture that says like, when ye seek, ye shall find.
Yeah.
I don't think that only applies to good things. That applies to bad things. When you seek for bad things, you will find them. You will find fault with your brethren if you're seeking it.
Yeah.
So I
true.
think it's up to us to exercise our agency in a way that we are seeking the good in others and then amplifying it.
Okay. So, my friends,
I think that we covered everything. I don't know if I forgot something, but we're close enough.
We're close enough.
And out of time.
So to our newfound friends on X, we welcome further dialogue, and I don't think you're a bunch of degenerate cowards hiding behind anonymous profiles in order to breed cruelty in a groupthink that is fueled by a lack of sunlight and interaction with attractive women and athletic occasions. I think that you're all just great guys who have been misled. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'm just
really
kidding.
Believable card.
That was okay. I was working. I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
He'll get there eventually.
It will come with
so
time.
Will you.
It will come with time. But in all honesty, all joking aside, to our new friends on X, we commit to actually, this is probably, I think you made up a good point, Brad, that we commit to putting more content out on X. Our principal platform is indeed YouTube, but putting more out on X so that people can be familiarized with our takes. Therefore, it will be more contextualized in the future. Does that sound like an emotionally intelligent take, Ethan Fawcett, resident life coach?
I would say so, because that shows that you're willing to take responsibility to try to help improve people's perceptions of what your intents are.
Okay, cool. Woke right is no different than the woke left. See you later. All right, guys. So let us know where you think we go wrong. And as always, for this and more, please make sure you guys check us out on WardRadio.com.
Reset.